Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be talking about momentum. The reason why it's important to talk about momentum for sprinting is because of a few things, specifically for how you train and how you race as well. Obviously that being the most important one, because everything you train to do is for your races. But the reason why momentum is important is because momentum is physics and sprinting is just the manipulation of physics to achieve a fast time, like how basically everything in the world is. You're just manipulating physics to do something. For example, me moving my hand, I'm using physics to be able to move it throughout planes of motion. But the reason why momentum is important for sprinting is because bare bones of sprinting, if you just break it down to the basics of the basics, what you're trying to do in physics is make physics your friend as much as possible. Make physics your best friend. And then when physics starts to eventually hate you or start to not like you anymore, you want to make it so that this is as small as possible. And that's essentially building momentum, maintaining momentum, and then trying to slow down the loss of momentum. The first two phases are when physics is your best friend. The final phase is when physics becomes your worst enemy. And it's important to understand that we want to make sure that we have the best momentum possible. What does this mean? This means that we're not trying to win a 100-meter race, for example, by 30 meters. We're trying to win a 100-meter race by 100 meters. This means you have to understand that when you're in your first 30 meters, you're doing your blocks, your block clearance, you're trying to get out of your dry phase. The goal here isn't to be as fast as possible. It's to be as powerful as possible. The more powerful you are as you come out the blocks, the more momentum you can build up. Because, yeah, you can move your feet really fast out the blocks. Anyone can do that. But once you've moved your feet really fast, how much momentum have you generated? Because think of it like this. You've generated some momentum, obviously, because you're moving. But think about the potential. Keep going my videos. This is bad. Think about the momentum potential that you could have, potential momentum you could have generated with the abilities of your body right now. For example, let's say you just sprinted out the blocks as fast as you could and you run an 11.5. What if you focused purely on momentum? You could have run an 11.3, for example. Which means you need to understand that whilst physics is your friend, you want to make sure that he gives you the best boost possible. And the best boost he can give you whilst he is your friend isn't allowing you to win the race, be the first person to 30 meters and pray you can make it to the 100-meter line and that position still stays the same. Is being able to build momentum so that you're not winning by 30, but maybe you're going to be winning by 70. And at 70, the amount of maintenance you need to do and the amount of deceleration you have is minimal. And most likely in the race, you're not going to be still be building up momentum by 70 meters. But that doesn't mean you can't try to still be starting to use the momentum you've generated later on in the race. There's no point in maxing out the momentum you've allowed yourself to build by 30 meters when you still got 70 more meters to run, because that means you've just made it so that the maintenance phase, which by the way will not change length, has started earlier than it should have, which means the deceleration phase, which will last as long as you let it, will take a majority of the race. For example, let's say you can maintain your top speed for 10 meters. That means by 40 meters onwards, you're going to start to decelerate. That is useless, because that means for 60 meters, you're going to be decelerating, which is literally going to be the bane of your existence, because you're going to run a race, winning the race, and then from the 40-50 meter mark onwards, you're just going to see everyone just pass you. I've never been in a situation for 100 meters, but I have been in a situation for 200 meters, and I've been one of the and whenever I'm in 100 meters, I'm usually the one that passes everyone else by the end of it. And that's because my main focus is on trying to build momentum. And when I was first starting out in sprinting, I was more new. I was very bad with my starts, but my top end speed was what saved me. So because I was so bad with my starts, I actually did used to not really build up that much momentum. But my form was so poor, I had to take it slow anyway, regardless of if I thought I was moving fast or not. So I was still building up momentum, which allowed me to catch people later on because I was able to hold my speed very well. I had a longer maintenance phase than most people did. My deceleration phase was probably slightly better than everyone else's. So my top end speed was higher, or it looked higher than everyone else's. And at the end of the race, I really did my best. But the real reason why I was able to perform so well was because my form was so bad I couldn't. But if your form is good enough, and there's no excuses for why you're not building up momentum, then you should build up momentum. Because if you don't do it, you could be leaving literally 1 or 2 meters per second of speed just dormant that could have helped you in a race. And think of it like this: if you're able to run your top speed at 10 meters per second, then that means you're probably going to be running a low 11-second time. If you can do it at 11 meters per second, that means you're going to be running a mid to low 10-second time. And if you can get to 12 meters per second to a slightly a bit higher, then you're going to be running sub 10. Anywhere in that range, you're going to be running sub 10. Why would you sacrifice this extra speed just to make your ego feel better, knowing that, yes, I'm moving faster, oh yes, I'm winning the race by now? Because the people you see win races and they lead back at the gun, there are a few outliers, but usually the reason why they led at the gun and they continue to lead by the end is because they generated momentum. It's just that they're much better at generating momentum at a faster rate than you, which is why they was able to win from literally the very first step onwards. If you aren't used to taking your time to build up speed, then you're not going to be winning by the first step. And if you don't practice building up momentum, whether it's in training or when you're actually sprinting, there's no way for you to do this and get faster, because as your form improves, you're going to slow down a bit and then you're going to speed up again, and you're going to get basically to the maximum speed you can achieve with that form until you hit a speed wall. What that means is, yes, if you decide to build on momentum, you're going to feel slow as you first do it. But as you start to do it more and more, I'm not saying you're not going to still feel slow. You probably will still feel slow, because especially when you come on the blocks, building up momentum is not it's not something that happens quickly. It happens slowly, very slowly over time and time. But as you get better at it, you're going to realize that everyone else, whilst you feel slow, everyone else is moving at a snail speed whilst they're trying to build up speed. A few of them trying to build up momentum, but you're so used to building up momentum that you're able to do it as efficiently as possible and as quickly as possible, because that's what you really want. When you're sprinting and you're trying to build momentum, you want it to be so that you figure out how to do it faster. You don't want to figure out how to quickly get to speed faster. You want to figure out how to get momentum faster, because once you start to actually get momentum more and more and more, that momentum is going to get realized in the race. It's just later on in the race, and your steps are just more powerful. They propelled you further down the track in less steps, which means you're using less energy to do what you would normally do, but now you're doing it faster, and you're getting to your top speed you're getting to your top speed like you normally do, but it's later on in the race, which means you're able to hold it for longer. Because if you get to your top speed earlier on in the race, say you can only hold it for 10 meters, that's 10 meters before you can have to start to decelerate. But if you're still trying to build up to top speed, everyone else is either trying to do the same thing or they're already there as well. But if you're trying to build up, it's much easier to, by the start of the race anyway, get up to speed than it is to try and hold that speed. And if you're trying to get up to that speed and everyone else is roughly around that spot, the longer it could take you to be, the better it's going to be. For example, if everyone, I know these numbers aren't very accurate, but if everyone's top speed was like 30 meters per hour, 30 miles per hour, and your top speed is the same, but you was at 29 miles per hour longer than everyone else was, that means by the time you get to 30 miles per hour, there's a chance that everyone is going to start to decelerate, but you just reach top speed. And later on in the race than they have, obviously, because they now start to decelerate, which means by the end of the race, you might not even been able to decelerate. And if you did, not by much. But once you've got the momentum, now it's to hold the momentum, which is this is very, very important, because this phase is hard to lengthen. It is possible to lengthen it, but it's hard to actually increase how long you're able to hold your top speed for. To hold your top speed for longer, you need to work on speed endurance. But you need to work on speed endurance the correct way, and you need to make sure that you know when to push and when to just coast. And in my opinion, this is more important than learning speed endurance, because you can go an entire season without ever training speed endurance, but all you learn how to do is know when to push and when to just coast. And technically, you've just trained speed endurance, and your form's improved enough to the point where you're able to actually hold your top speed for longer than you normally would. It won't be by much, but even 1 extra meter is a lot. And if you're able to do that, that is obviously going to give you dividends when you actually go to start to race. I don't actually have to explain why that is, but the reason why you want to learn how to do this and know when to push and when to just coast is because once you want to push up until you get to your top speed, but once you get there, pushing any more just wastes energy, because your body is incapable of moving faster than its top speed, its current top speed. It cannot move any faster than that. And you might want to push because you feel like you're continuing to move faster, but really you're not. I forgot which race it was, but there's a video of Usain Bolt and Kim Collins in a race. Don't remember what year it was, probably World Champs though. And in the race, you see Kim Collins really, really, really pushing, trying really hard. And Usain Bolt is essentially just jogging across the line. And yeah, genetic anomaly. Understandable why he's just jogging and passing everyone. But if you look at their faces, you can see, I'm pretty sure Usain Bolt was smiling. But Kim Collins, he looked like he was dying. And the reason being was Usain Bolt hit his top speed and he just held. He just held what he was given. Kim Collins hit his top speed and he saw he wasn't where he wanted to be, so he continued to push. If you're in a race and people have passed you and they passed you really, really easily and you can't catch up to them with your top speed and they're still pulling away, do not push. If you push, they will just get further and further away from you. If you just hold on to what you're given, they will probably still get further away from you, but not by much, because they're going to start to decelerate as well, which means you have a chance to maybe catch up to them in the third phase of the race, which means once you've got the maintenance done and physics is now against you with the deceleration. This is why it's important to know when to push, when to just coast, because if you don't know when to just coast, you can shorten your maintenance phase because you're using up more energy and your body just can't sustain your top speed for any longer. And when it gets to deceleration, which is the latter half of the race, if you continue to push, you're just going to use up more energy, which means you're going to decelerate at a faster and faster rate than you probably could have if you just coasted. If you could have decelerated at like 0.5 meters, if say this, whatever your top speed is in meters per second, if you could have removed 0.5 meters per second every about, let's say, 5 meters, then maybe it might be 1 meter instead. And that's a big, big difference, because that means by the time you get to the end of the race, you could just be trying as hard as you can, but it doesn't look like you're jogging. But someone who decided to jog could have been moving at a speed at the same rate or faster than you were. And as a sprinter, that is like one of the most embarrassing things that could ever happen to you. Someone jogs and passes you. Though I highly doubt anyone's ever been in that situation, but you can understand how it would feel to be in that situation. But it doesn't have to be, because you just need to know when to push and when to coast. If you know when to push and when to coast, you're able to use momentum in a way that satisfies physics, where it's like, okay, I can work with you. Because if you resist physics, it's going to resist you. And trust me, resisting physics is a battle you will never, ever win. You need to know how to go around physics and make physics help you, even if it doesn't want to. But trying to stand against physics and resist it will never give you any benefits. Which means if you want to actually be able to get faster, you need to be able to use momentum efficiently, know when momentum is built up through your body as well. Know the most efficient way to build up momentum is taking slow steps until your body starts to cycle properly. Know how to maintain momentum is just by putting in enough force to keep the momentum you've already generated sustained. In fact, the Way to Win made a video on they didn't really go too much detail into momentum because they're more a channel that focuses on relaxation, but they mentioned relaxation as just trying to spin a bicycle tire. You put a lot of force into spinning a tire, and as the tire starts to go faster and faster, you put about the same force or less force, but in less time, until you're essentially just doing this again and again and again, and the tire just keeps spinning as you do that until you can just let it go, and then it's going to obviously start to decelerate over time. But even then, you're going to still want to try to resist it, but with less taps less contacts each time as you go. And that's how you actually want to maintain your momentum, by doing that. And the only way you can do that is by being relaxed, because if you're not relaxed, you're going to have to activate your muscles, which contract at a slower rate than your tendons do, and your tendons can contract slower than how they probably already do. And actually, no, they definitely can, because the fast stretch shortening cycle occurs in 0.25 seconds, 250 meters per second. And if you're not within that range, then I mean, it'd be crazy if you weren't as a sprinter, but that's a problem that you need to fix. And it is possible to not be in that range if you start to use your muscles. For example, to give a good example, when you're coming out of the blocks, there's a good chance you're moving slower than that out of the blocks with every single ground contact time you get. But as you start to move faster and faster and faster, this ground contact time speeds up, gets lower, so you can continue. So understanding how physics can aid or negate all of your efforts in the race is important, so you know when you should be pushing, when just to relax and coast, so you can maintain. I need to know when this happens in your races and be able to feed it, because if you can't feel when you're building up momentum, when you've built up all your momentum, when it's being realized and when it has been realized, so you should just be coasting now, you're going to end up over pushing, you can use more energy, and your 100-meter times are going to suffer because of it. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comment section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.